Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Stories for Hope podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and for those of you joining us for the first time, Stories for Hope is a podcast run by Hope for Kids International. On this podcast, we share amazing, inspirational stories to inspire you to bring hope to those in need. There are many families who have had a dramatic impact on the ministry of Hope for Kids International, and today we want to highlight the Sullivan family. This family has had life-changing experiences as they traveled with us on mission trips for many, many years. So let's jump right in and hear from our founder and president, Tom Agam.
A gentleman named Pat Sullivan and his wife Diane, uh, their daughter went with me to Chile, and is this just Colleen is this person that lights up a room wherever she goes. She had just survived cancer and had just this new lease on life. And she and her husband came to Chile with us, and she was contagious. And she said, "Pray for my parents, that they can know Jesus and they'll get involved." And so a number of months later, I was speaking at Colleen's church in Seattle, and she invited her parents over from Spokane, and they came. And at that time, when we would have our application, we asked people to write a little testimony of why you wanted to go on a mission and a little bit about your faith. And so after I was done speaking, the pastor said, "I don't even want to take another moment. If you're moved to go on a trip with Tom, go back to right now to the table." And people did. He said, "I don't want you thinking about pizza or whatever, what you're going to have for dinner." And then, of course, that's all you think about. They went back there, and Pat and Diane Sullivan went back there and signed, filled it out right there. And um, Pat wrote something to the effect of, "I don't believe, but I believe there's a higher power." And of course, Colleen was over the moon that they were going. So Pat and Diane, I don't remember the exact length of time, but maybe the next summer or whatever, we used to go to Chile in August, get out of the Phoenix heat and go into winter in Chile and snowboard and ski. That's another story. So Pat and Diane came with us, and it was again like a lot of younger people, high school kids mostly. And at that time, in the evening, we would have small team, 10 or 12 or something like that, and we would have our family time at night and reminisce the day and talk about it. And then we were actually staying at a Holiday Inn Express, and they had Bibles on the, your table beside your bed or whatever. And I'd share a little bit of God's word, and we'd share, and they were nicest people and friendly with everybody and everything. And one day Diane said to me, "Could we do family time tonight?" And I said, "Well, what do you have in mind?" She said, "We've been reading the Bible along the bed, and we have some insights." So that night, they told a story from the Bible. I don't remember what it was, but Diane said, "And because of what I've seen on this and experienced on this team, I want to be a follower of Jesus." And Pat said, in his beautifully honest way, "Well, I'm thinking about it. I'll give it like a thought." He was 62 years old. He was an attorney. So, you could understand the mind of an attorney. I want to see the evidence and everything. So that was like, we were all the kids, these high school kids, were just like, you know, so excited that they had decided to do that. And then uh, that following January, uh, my wife and I, this is 20 years ago, went to visit them. They had a condo up in Schweitzer Mountain in Idaho, and went to ski with them. And while when we first got there, they start talking about faith, of course, and all this. And Pat has a big Bible, and he shoves it across the coffee table and says, "I just read this." And he said, "I announced to my family at Thanksgiving that I'm now a follower of Jesus Christ." Whew. I mean, it was just uh, absolutely amazing. And that's not the end of the story. They later joined our board. For years, he was the chairman of our board, traveled all over the world with us. He's a very accomplished musician, plays a number of reed instruments, and one time we were down in Cuba, and we were in a hospital. It was very restricted. We just got rare permission to go to this hospital because we brought a medicine. We had to be very careful about what we said, and we were monitored. But there was a boy that was pretty much comatose, had not responded to anything. And Pat and another board member that he'd recruited, beautiful Catholic couple, both played instruments. They'd been in this band together, went into that room with that boy and played. I don't remember Don's instrument. I think it was a trumpet, and I think Pat had a clarinet, uh, and they began to play gospel songs, hymns, old hymns, and that boy opened his eyes, and like responded, and the nurses are just they're beside themselves that he had responded. And of course, that was another one of those things where Pat saw, when you go on a mission, you can bring your gifts, you can, you know, share and all that, but there's a God factor in the middle of it, you know. And Pat had said to me when he told me he was now a follower of Jesus, he said, there are just too many God things happening. He called them coincidences. One other story about Pat. We were in Chion, Chile. And again, as I said, it's winter and it's cold. And we went to a homeless shelter. And I saw what I thought, looked like, uh, like you picture in the concentration camps, the three levels of bunk beds and everybody squeezed, and these poor people there. And they were kind of rowdy and not very attentive. And Pat and Don got their instruments out, different, you know, different, and I think there was one other guy that Pat had recruited, and they started playing these songs, and the typical songs, and there was not much response. And Pat began to play a song, and they just came alive. They just woke up. And Michelle Hallinan, who worked with me for like 13 years, and her husband were there, and they started dancing with some of these guys. It was just this, all of a sudden it changed because Pat was playing a song familiar to them. And it was brilliant. And ended up, oh, it was so moving. We saw some of the men did not even have socks. We took our socks off. It was an unforgettable night. There were many stories that they just felt God there. A director was beside himself of the response and everything that happened. So later, I said, Pat, that song, how did you know that song? He said, I'd never played it in my life. So, to this day, Pat and Diane, their lives were changed. They've inspired people all over the world. They've just stopped traveling now. They've touched countless lives. Not only brought their circle of friends in, and they've traveled with us, and have become people that have sponsored kids and done wells, and done it. Just the ripple effect goes on and on. So I have a lot of stories about people that have traveled with us. We have many precious people that similar stories, but that's the one probably dearest to my heart because I saw that whole transition from non-believer skeptic to what they are today. They're very involved in Southside Church in Spokane, and I've been giving and have a passion for people in need, Oh, well, anyway, I'll stop right there. They're just the most beautiful people.
Thank you, Tom. And thanks again to all our listeners for joining us as we share this story honoring the life of Pat Sullivan and the legacy of the Sullivan family. The influence of seeing God's love in action can really change a person's heart. And that's one of the great things about going on a mission trip. Whether it's serving in a local ministry or an international one, seeing God's love in action is inspiring and life changing. And when we go out into the world and serve, God works through us and uses our gifts to bless others. Over the years, we've seen many team members come to Christ after going on a mission trip. If Pat and Diane's story has inspired you to want to go on a mission trip, we'd love to get connected with you and talk about the countries where we serve and the trip opportunities that we have. And you can get connected with us by going to h4ki.org. Thanks everyone for listening and have a blessed day.